Hi everyone, it's Neve here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be playing with lots and lots and lots of layers, which is what mixed media is kind of all about. So I'm starting off in my Dina Wakley journal, and to begin with I'm just gluing down some collage tissue. So just using some gel medium and just spreading it out over the page and gluing it down. Very random, not sure where I'm going to do it. In fact, I think that's collage tissue I've actually stamped. So you can use pre-printed collage tissue, but in actual fact, if you've got stamps and some greaseproof paper, you can make your own collage tissue to glue down on the pages. It makes really good collage fodder. Next I'm going in with some paint and painting it down. Now this is acrylic paint, but it's very fluid. It's some paint I bought from Officeworks, which is a stationery store in Australia. Golden fluent paints, those sorts of things. It's just a really fluidy paint. You can see how easily it pours out. So I put down the yellow and let it dry, and now I'm going to put down the magenta. And once I've done that, I'm going to use my wet wipe to rub away some of the paint. And you can see you sort of get this resist thing happening. So it's really important when you're doing this, particularly if you're using really fluid paint like I am, that you work quite quickly to remove this, because it does dry really quickly. You'll notice over the collage tissue as well, because it's got the gel medium on it and it's a different tone to it, you get these sort of little patches of different colour happening. So once that's all dry, now I'm going to do the same with some of the cerulean blue over the top. And again, I'm overlapping colours. So I'm deliberately putting it over the yellow, I'm deliberately putting it over some of the red, and I'm wiping it off, and it's going to give me this sort of resist happening. So if you want to get a really sort of full effect of this, it's really important that you overlap your colours, and again, working quickly. So you need to make sure that when you're wiping it away that the paint hasn't actually dried, otherwise you're not going to be able to remove it, because acrylic paint is permanent when it's dried. So once I've finished that and I've got my layers down, then I decide what do I do next. So I'm going to put some masks over the top. So this is a new mask from Natalie May. In fact, a lot of the things that I'm using today are from the lovely Natalie May, who's an Australian store owner who designs her own products as well. And you can see those lovely bags of stamps there, they come from her as well. So I was just playing around with a lot of purchases that I had made, which I was enjoying very much. So I'm just going in with some white and adding just random text all over. So again, while these sort of say words, and I'm not really putting it down to be able to read the words, I just want it as pattern in the background. Same with this stencil, I decided I wanted to put a few metallics on, so I'm going in with the gold and sort of just doing random stenciling. So just because you've got a full stencil there doesn't mean you need to stencil all of it. You can sort of just do little bits and pieces, but you will notice that I'm kind of leading the eye around the page. So I've sort of got that diagonally line going through, and then I've connected it up to the top. So one of the tricks of the trade is when you're doing things to connect to edges, whether it be the sides or the tops, it sort of makes everything make a little bit of sense to us. This is a new foam stamp from Scrap FX, which I had stamped on again onto some collage tissue. And because I had one strip of it, I decided to have another strip, so I'm just stamping it out again. It stamps up beautifully, so foam stamps are fantastic for stamping. They retain the ink really well, and you can get lots of impressions out of them. But it's a really easy way to make your own sort of collage tapes and pieces to stick onto your page. Because collage medium has a little bit of give time in it as well, if it's not quite in the right place, so you notice I lifted that up again and moved it, it doesn't stick straight away, so you've got a little bit of time to move things around so they're where you want them to be. Now I am going in with some stamps, And these are some leaf stamps, again from the lovely Natalie May. So they're kind of like little border stamps that I thought I'd go in and stamp around the numbers, just to sort of give it a bit of a frame. I think I give up on the block in the end, yeah. So I was coming up to the gutter of the book, and obviously it's really hard to stamp when you're using blocks around sort of raised areas, which is quite often why I end up just going rogue and not using a block in the end. So a lot of the stuff that's happening on this page, you can see it's sort of mixing and melding together. It's a little bit hard to see what's going on, but that's okay, because it all adds to the interest in the end. So it means that you can sort of have a look at what's happening, and it gives at layers of interest. When you're looking up close at it, there's lots of different things to sort of see and discover. So the little birds that you saw there are from Scrap FX. They come on a collage sheet that you can just cut out. I'd been playing around and cut these out before. I had some ideas for another page and it didn't quite work, so I thought I might try them on this page. This is also a stencil from Scrap FX that I decided I was going to use. So it's got these beautiful bird masks on it, but it also had lots of words about birds on it too. And because I had a little bit of gold paint left, I decided that I would use that and use it as a little bit of edge to it. Now, because my gold paint is a little bit runny, I didn't get a brilliant impression as I stuck that down, but again, it was just sort of an impression in the background. I wasn't necessarily putting those pieces down to be able to read them really clearly, so you know, the fact that I've just got words in the background was enough for me. I then decided I wanted to put my birds on, but I needed to ground them in some way, or not necessarily ground them, but make them make sense. One bird obviously is flying in the air, but these birds needed to be on something. They couldn't just sort of be sitting there. So these are little chipboard shapes from Dina Wakley that I had, that I thought I would use to use as a branch in the background. So it's really fine chipboard, and it worked out really well gluing that down. But before I glued it down, I decided I wanted to add a little bit of a shadow to my birds. So what this does, I've just used this Stabilo Oil pencil around the outside of my images, and then I'm just wetting it with my brush, because it's a water soluble pencil, and it sort of gives this instant shadow. So this helps to push the birds out from the background. It helps them create that illusion that it's three-dimensional, that there's layers upon layers, really, really easily. Instead of, you know, having to fuss around too much, you can do it really easily with a water soluble pencil and just gently brush it with a little bit of water. When I glued the branch down, I then decided I needed to do the same to my other birdie. So again, just a little bit of a thin line with my water soluble pencil, and then just brushing out the excess ink. So as soon as you add water to the Stabilo Oil pencil, you get this almost like intense black ink paint from it. If it's too dark for you, you can always sponge a little bit off with a paper towel. The more water you add, obviously the more diluted it's going to get. So if you find it is too dark, you can just sort of keep adding water and rubbing it away until you're happy with the effect in the end. When I was finished with that, I decided the final thing I wanted to do was to put a quote on this page. So I looked up on my phone and used a keyword. I think I looked for flight or strength as my keyword for this to write my quote out. And you can see I'm writing over my layers. So, you know, I could have quite easily avoided those numbers, but I wanted to sort of make sure they get pushed into the background. The only thing I didn't write over was my birds. So I'm sort of thinking about how it all works together. And I started off with a thin white pen, and now I'm going back and adding a little bit more thickness to some of the letters to push them out from the background. By also adding a second coat, you can see how opaque my lettering is becoming as well. So sometimes if you find it's too light on the first coat, you can put a second coat of paint over the top. If you don't have paint pens, you can certainly use different pens, or use white paint and a paintbrush. I just find I've got more control using the pen rather than trying to use a paintbrush. So the quote is, strength doesn't come from what you do, it comes from overpowering the things you once couldn't do. I think I've missed out a word in that. This is what happens when you go back and look at things again. So finally what I'm going through and doing is adding my drop shadow. Now it seems a little bit pedantic in the fact that, you know, this is the third time I'm looking at this lettering. But what this does is, particularly on really detailed backgrounds, it helps push, just like putting the shadows on the bird, it helps push the lettering to the foreground, helps them float above that busy background. Now it's just really simple. With my letters, I put my drop shadows on the bottom left hand corner of all my letters. As long as you're consistent of where you put it, it doesn't really matter where. So if you did it on top right, that would be fine, as long as it's in the, you know, that's in the same place for each letter. Depending on how defined you want it to be, you can also choose where you put your drop shadow on your lettering. I've chosen to put it right next to the side of my white, but you can sometimes actually put it onto your white, like leave a little millimetre of white and then put your drop shadow. That can really brighten it up as well. So it's up to you as you're going along to see what you like and how it sticks out on your page. But certainly down the bottom here, you can see what a difference it makes by putting that little drop shadow on. So once you've finished doing that, that's your time to sort of have a look at the page and see, what do I need to do? Is it finished? Is it not finished? But having a final little heat of the page, decided that I was done. So here you can see some of the layers up close. So this is the collage bird and showing the shadowing around it. You can see a little bit of the drop shadow lettering as well. Again with the collage birds. And the reason I chose to put these birds on, one, because I love them, but two, because they are layered and interesting as well. So by putting them on an interesting background, it really helps tie it all together. So I hope you have an explorer playing with lots of layers in your art journal. There is always going to be a stage it's going to look like a mess and you think, what have I done? But I promise you, if you keep going, it will all pull itself together in the end and you'll be really pleased with your final product. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.